All right, folks, welcome. Colleagues, friends, first responders, invited guests, neighbors. On behalf of the Medical Society of the County of the Queens, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to all of you, and thank you for joining us here this evening at this fantastic space in the Museum of the Moving Image. My name is Dr. Charles Lopresto. For those of you I have not had the pleasure to meet yet, I'm happy to introduce myself as the president of the Medical Society of the County of Queens and your host for this evening. I am a practicing internal medicine hospitalist at NewYork-Presbyterian Queens and proud third-generation Queens resident. I am especially proud to be welcoming everybody here at the Museum of the Moving Image in Astoria, the part of Queens my family first called home generations ago, and one of the great cultural institutions in the arts and museum landscapes in New York City. For those unfamiliar with the Medical Society of County of Queens, it is the first and largest membership-based medical organization in Queens County. Founded in 1806, we are in our 218th year of serving the Queens community and represent over 1,400 physician voices throughout the county. We are an active advocacy organization, meeting with legislators regularly to ensure practice of medicine in Queens County is as best as it can be for both physicians and patients alike. We are gathered here this evening in one of our first public-facing events in some years, as we feel our role as a medical society is not only to serve our physician members, but also to allow for a dialogue between the community and physicians on topics of mutual interest. The relationship between physicians and their patients is one of sacred trust, and we hope to extend that relationship between the medical society and the Queens community at large with more public-facing events in the future. Tonight, we are proud to present a screening of the Nat Geo award-winning documentary, The First Wave. As described from its producers, with exclusive access inside one of New York City's hardest-hit hospital systems during the terrifying first 4 months of the pandemic, Oscar-nominated and Emmy Award-winning director Matthew Heineman's The First Wave spotlights the everyday heroes at the epicenter of the COVID-19 pandemic as they come together to fight one of the greatest threats the world has ever encountered. Leaving a devastating trail of death and despair, this once-in-a-century pandemic changed the very fabric of our daily lives and exposed long-standing inequities in our society. Employing his signature approach of character-driven cinema verite, Heineman embeds us with a group of doctors, nurses, and patients on the front lines as they all desperately try to navigate the crisis, with each distinct storyline serving as a microcosm through which we can view the emotional and societal impacts of the pandemic. The First Wave is a testament to the strength of the human spirit. As one of the frontline physicians who served in an internal medicine residency at Jamaica Hospital Medical Center during the First Wave and shared the same experience depicted in this film, it is my honor and privilege to host this screening as a way for our community and physicians to come together to reflect on what we have been through. Indeed, we have been through the worst of the worst, the epicenter of the epicenter, as it was called. Data from the CDC approximate that in the first 3 months of the first wave of the COVID-19 pandemic in New York City, there were 203,000 laboratory-confirmed cases of COVID-19, an overall fatality rate of 9.2%, with a 32.1% mortality rate among hospitalized patients. During this time, New York City lost 18,679 lives to COVID-19. 5,882 of those were in our community in Queens, the highest of any of New York City's 5 boroughs. Among those were my patients, my neighbors, my colleagues, and my mentors. This experience will mark my medical training and career for the rest of my life, as it has for so many other physicians, frontline workers, individuals, and families. I count myself lucky, as I was one who made it through. For a long time, I did not, and could not, reflect on what I went through. With the help of my friends, colleagues, family, and my fiancée, to whom I'm forever grateful, I have made some progress. Many of my colleagues who were on the front lines alongside me are still not ready to face these demons and have declined to be here with us this evening. With this in mind, I encourage all of you to look around at each other and remember that we are the lucky ones who made it through and are fortunate to have the opportunity to share these reflections and experience. However, as a medical society and community, we have more work to do to ensure that individuals are healed and that we never forget both the tragedy and heroism of the first wave. Following the screening, we invite you to stay for a brief discussion and reflection with an esteemed panel of fellow frontline physicians and leaders of the Medical Society of the County of Queens. And now, at last, we present the first wave. We can roll it. I am proud to introduce our esteemed panel of frontline physicians, all of whom were leaders within the Medical Society of the County of Queens and shared the same experience depicted in this film. First is, if you would join me, Dr. Cooke, Dr. Asami, and Dr. Satterfield. Dr. Cooke is the immediate past president of the Medical Society of the County of Queens. He's a practicing pulmonologist right here in Astoria and serves as the chair of the Department of Medicine at NewYork-Presbyterian Queens and vice chair of the Department of Medicine at Weill, Cornell. Thank you for being here, Dr. Cooke. Dr. James Satterfield to his left is the co-chair of the Legislative Committee and a member of the Board of Trustees and past president of the Medical Society of the County of Queens. He is a practicing general surgeon and holds the titles of Assistant Professor of Clinical Surgery at Weill Cornell Medicine and Medical Director of the Center for Wound Healing at NewYork-Presbyterian Queens. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Satterfield. Last but not least, Dr. Sohaila Rostami is the Assistant Secretary and the Chair of the Social Committee for the Medical Society of the County of Queens. She is the Chief Surgical Resident at St. John's Episcopal Hospital and recently completed an acute burn and reconstructive surgery fellowship at Johns Hopkins. So thank you all for being here. Looks like Dr. Rostami brought the biggest crowd, so there we go. So, and we can have this informally, if anybody has any thoughts that they'd like to add, alongside this. I know all of you are here and participated and had these same experiences as well. So feel free to chime in if you have anything to add. I'll start with some questions. You folks can share the mic. And Dr. Cooke, maybe we'll start with you. What do you feel has been the impact of the first wave on physicians and also on the community?
I think I can go back to the last line spoken by the doctor here. You don't know what you're holding on to from those events. And as I'm watching the film, it brought me back to March, where our CMO contracted COVID, and I was asked to jump in and fill the breach. What was not covered here is the massive shortages of masks and equipment at the time, and what we had to do, washing masks, reusing goggles, running out of things. Low oxygen alarm because our main oxygen tank was running out. The numerous times, Jim will remember, how many times we were switching patients around the hospital trying to balance those with COVID, those without, and changing ICUs. The loud noises of the HEPA filters going throughout the hospital. All that being said, it was the worst of times, it was the best of times, because I think as a profession, we all came together. And also, my vivid memory is the community helping us, bringing us equipment, bringing us masks. I remember all the K95 masks coming from China. And in fact, I actually had 2 big boxes I actually delivered to Queens General Hospital because they were in worse shape than we were. So I try to focus on those memories, but it took a toll. It definitely took a toll. One evening at the command center, we had filled our last ICU bed. We were running out of ventilators, and I just had to go to the hallway, and I just put my head in my hands and I started sobbing because there's literally nothing more I could do on that particular day. It wasn't me. I could do stuff, but there was no equipment for me to do anymore. And it just lives in my memory, you know. But again, it also made me appreciate others and their roles in the hospital. In particular, our transporters. Our transporters suffered a lot. They lost a lot of their family. They lost a lot of their colleagues. We had to get them special suits that were water resistant, so they could actually take the bodies to all those refrigerated trucks. I remember meeting with them as a group, and just to let them vent and speak out. You know, in some ways, I was a little bit distant to some of it because of my role overseeing things, as opposed to being directly on a front line. But it just made it so much more important to make sure that we got the equipment that people needed. And these guys were showing up to work every day, just like we all were. And we had, as my role as a leader in that, I had to make sure, or do my best to make sure they had the equipment to protect themselves. It was trying. It was trying.
Thank you so much. I'd like to echo those sentiments also, because I think, as you mentioned, we went into a fight or flight kind of mode mentally, and it was more of a fight situation. We were running on adrenaline. We had no idea what hit us and how long it would continue going on. And so for me, the personal touch to that was we kept on going. We reallocated all of our resources. The PACU for the surgical team became an ICU, and we very much did exactly what was going on. Everyone whose skill sets were appropriate throughout the hospital were modified, were used. So for instance, being part of the surgical team, we became the go-to individuals for procedures. So we didn't want the medical teams whose skill was to manage the ventilators and the complex medical situation. We became the proceduralists so that they would have time to focus on patients. So it was really everyone stepped forward with their skills to help make the system efficient in the face of volumes of patients coming in and the mess that really was unfolding in front of us. But it didn't really hit us, at least for my department and the residents that were working at my hospital with me, until we lost one of our emergency room physicians. He was one of the first ED physicians who got COVID. Dr. gave him, and he passed away. And all of a sudden, the reality set in for us that we are not immune either, and that we're every day coming to work. We're motivated. We don't know what we're fighting, but we're still fighting. We're keeping the adrenaline rush going as long as we can until one of our own got sick and passed away, and the reality set in for all of us. And that's when I saw that the morale start declining, but we had no other option. We didn't have a moment to think, to recuperate. We just had to keep on going. And it just reshifted reality for all of us on so many levels. But it really was a team effort, and we were in the same room, for us at least in the PACU. We had reinstated essentially 9 beds back to back next to each other, no privacy. We're all in the same room, be it the nursing staff, the radiology techs coming in, the respiratory technologists, the other ancillary staff. We were all one big team. We were breathing the same air indoors, and the goal was just to get through. And as you had mentioned earlier also, I still don't think the reality of what happened has kind of dawned on the medical community. We're still dealing with the after effects of it because it really hasn't ended. There's another surge right now going on again, at least in my hospital, and we're seeing it come back. Not as severe, but we're still coming to terms with what happened and how to deal with it moving forward.
I think what I focus on is the fear and the despair that people had. You know, we walk down the halls every day, we say hello, how you doing? Sometimes we don't even speak to certain people because they're not in our domain. Yet, they struggled. They struggled, and they were there. And they had their own difficulties. Each had their own drama in life. You talk to the staff, and that fear after being in the ICU or managing a patient and going home and having to unpeel your clothes and take a shower before you can touch your own family. That fear stayed, that anxiety. And that led to the depression and the feeling of being incomplete and not being able to, you know, when we do something, when we do an operation, we take care of a patient, we get them out of disease state, we feel this sense of joy, we feel this sense of refreshment that we've done something. But this was a time when the fear and the despair just became so overwhelming. And the end result is that many people said, I can't take this anymore. You saw it in the film. But a lot of people left. They left medicine because they didn't want to go through that again. And that's coming on the other side. And we still have this tremendous shortage that still exists. When you lose 30% of your workforce, that's a lot. We've not been able to recover from that. And you're talking about skilled people. So it's been very difficult. So that fear and that despair is the thing to focus on. And I remember the phone calls from an 80-year-old person that worked in the hospital for many years saying, I can't breathe. And I go to the emergency room and they send me back home and I can't breathe. And I go back to the emergency room and they send me back home. And I'm up all night and I can't breathe. They're home. And in the movie they just touched on this a little bit when these people came home. But what about those who are home and they don't have those other assistants? And in the hospital, we don't know, we don't know what to do for that person that's just on the edge and said, I can't breathe. So that becomes a difficult thing to deal with. And they live that day by day by day. And the long COVID, it's been hard. Some of us have tested positive, got over it, and have gone on with our life. But there's others that still drag the beast within them. And that's
Thank you all for sharing those anecdotes and your responses. And those resonate with me, and I'm sure with many here who went through these experiences. Just to share as well, I remember the times when I still have actually the first N95 mask that my Department of Medicine gave me when I was a second-year resident. And they gave it to me in a brown paper bag, and they said, this will last you 1 week. Come back after a week and get another one. I still have that one. I'm hoping to put it in a museum one day if somebody wants it. And I remember also getting a donation of KN95s, and I took a leadership role among my residents, and I said, this is my bag, and I'm gonna come to morning checkout every morning, and if you need one, you can get one here. And we all took on different roles. I also remember carrying around a central line kit under my arm for about 2 weeks, when every half an hour there was just rapid response, code blue after code blue, popping in the room saying, do you have access? Do you need access? Let me put a blind central line while you're doing chest compressions. You have access? Okay, great, I'll be back in 10 minutes. Let me see if you need pressors now. One of the most jarring things was when we do a code, we do a 2-minute check, pulse check. And not all of the, I was at Jamaica Hospital, so some of the equipment wasn't the most up to speed. We would use our phones to time the 2 minutes. And I have an iPhone, a smartphone, and I put in so many 2-minute timers that eventually my phone gave me a reminder. It said, "Would you like to set a 2-minute timer?" And that was one of those moments that really hit me. And I said, oh, we're really doing a lot of this. We touched on this, Dr. Rostami. What challenges do you think physicians and or the community will have from this in the future? And who will identify and address these challenges?
I think while this was happening, and it was happening so rapidly, we didn't have enough information about the pathophysiology of what COVID-19 did to the body. And there was information coming from everywhere around the world. And everyone has their iPhones, and everyone's sitting at home under quarantine reading. And unfortunately, what happened also, in my opinion, was within the medical community, between the clinical physicians and the non-clinical physicians, there were disagreements as to how to move forward, what to do. At the beginning of the pandemic, they said, don't wear masks. This is not a respiratory issue. And partway through now, you're forcing everyone to wear masks. And then throw that in the middle of the political nuances of people having disagreements. Which party do you side with, so on and so forth. So it became a political issue when it should not have ever been a political issue. It was a medical issue. And within that, the secondary portion of that was within the medical world, it was also very controversial what to do, how to approach it. And so even within our communities, within the hospital, there's a lot of distrust, miscommunication. And the research just could not keep up with providing us with accurate information. And then that trickled down to the community, who have loved ones coming to the hospital, literally not being able to breathe, and yet deciding, do I leave my loved one here where I can't come back and see them, or I take them home and risk having them decompensate at home? And it really scarred, I think, the relationship in the community between physicians and non-physicians in the medical community, as well as the community of the individuals that we are here to serve. It's going to take a long road to rebuild that. I am hopeful. I think we can. When I was having conversations with my patients over the phone, at the time, I was very open and honest with them. I continued to be open and honest with them, even to the day-to-day activities. But that's something that needs to be built, both amongst ourselves, and it starts with us. And I think this is one of those steps moving forward in that right direction. But also then to reach out extend that hand to our community members and say, we're here, and we will have times like this where we don't know what we're dealing with, but we're doing everything in good faith, and we're here to do the best that we can for you all. But we're not there yet. We're pretty far away from there, in my opinion.
I agree. I mean, during the first wave and even the second wave, we were heroes, right? And now it seems, people at each other's throats. I mean, the anger. I was actually just responding to an email I got from one of my primary care physicians. A patient came in extremely angry, just dropping F-bombs at the staff, and there's such vitriol out there right now because of this. And a lot of it's mistrust, misinformation, disinformation. And I don't know when we're going to get over this. It was brewing. It angers me that people distrust the vaccination programs. Where, again, I remember having these meetings with staff, trying to convince them to take the vaccine. The disparaging of Dr. Anthony Fauci by multiple people. He's near and dear to my heart, Dr. Fauci. Dr. Fauci was chief resident at Cornell in 1970-71. I was chief resident of Cornell in 1990-1991, and that's my closest connection to Dr. Fauci. We're both chief residents. It just angers me, the disinformation that's out there, and how many people have died because of that disinformation. You saw it on TV, the people who give me the vaccine as they're dying. I'll take it now, I'll take the vaccine now. And it didn't have to be that way. It just did not have to be that way. I do try to focus on some of the positive moments. My orthopedic guys stepped up. They became our proning team. They volunteered. The vascular surgeons, Jim. They were our vascular access team, right? And then we started getting some of the ciliators, where you could put multiple people on the same ventilator. I said, and I remember having this conversation with the president of the hospital. I said, it's not going to work because the lung mechanics are very different. It's fine if everybody's lungs are normal. It doesn't work, and these concepts. But the point is, everybody was trying. Everybody was throwing out ideas and trying to make things better. And everybody was trying to teach it. I think we sampled every different pizza from Queens. They would show up. And then something happened. I don't know. It doesn't feel the same anymore. It was like the whole community had come together during that crisis, and now we seem to be sort of spiraling away from each other.
Yeah. So, what do you do when the leadership doesn't know what to do? How do you exist? How do you survive when the leadership is unsure? That becomes like a major question that we all flow through. I don't know. We haven't seen this before. I'm not sure. And it's okay to say I'm not sure. We don't know. We're going to try this, but we're not sure. And then you look at all of what happens with the social media, as you just explained. And then we all have our own biases that we don't know that they're our biases. But that's the baggage that each one of us carries with us. And that factors into how we make our decision and who we say and who we don't say. Who gets the resources and who does not. Joe carried masks down to another hospital because it's about sharing and we're all in the same fix. But why do some hospitals have no masks? Who allocates the resources? Who makes the decision? Where does the money come from? My concern is that those disadvantaged communities will always be in trouble unless they're bailed out. So Presbyterian may get the planes that come over from Europe and get a load of masks that nobody else can get when they were going for like $25 a box.
The irony of that was it got to the point where they didn't want us to use those K95 masks because they thought they were counterfeit. Right? And I better just wearing a mask, no matter where it was from, right? It's better than nothing.
And human behavior is not always benevolent. And that's just something that we have to live with. So who gets the resources? How is it allocated? Who makes the decision? And healthcare is changing. As to who's going to make the decision as to what drugs. I'm not worried about the technology. We are very far ahead with technology. But who's going to make the decisions? And what's going to happen with AI? And what information is going in and coming out? So these are ethical things that we need to think about and think about in the future. Because my loved one and your loved one, we want to make sure that they get the resources that they need if they can. Whether it's a drug or a treatment or hospitalization or a respirator, but it's not an even playing field. And we've got to take a look at that and decide how it's going to be.
someone raised their hand in the back.
Yes, we have a comment from the audience. Let me help you out here.
Thank you. Hi. The movie was very moving. I just want to say thank you so much for your hard work. The question is for all panelists. We talked a lot about how we can best serve patients. I'd like to talk about how we can best serve physicians. It's trauma, living through COVID, period. Physicians, we all know, have not gotten the proper trauma care and the proper trauma counseling for that significant event. How can we best counsel physicians so they can best serve patients? And how can we best move on and move forward so that more individuals want to serve the profession to the best of their capability instead of drop out? Because we all know that post 2020, a lot of physicians have dropped out for very significant reasons. So how do we stop that bleeding? How do we get more people to join the profession? Thank you.
Great question, thank you.
I'll just make a comment and say that not just physicians, it's all of the healthcare workforce that's there. We have a tremendous nursing shortage,
Yes.
and they were the first frontline people, and they were damaged because at least the physicians can have some understanding of what happens with the pathophysiology that goes on. But many of the nurses that are there, and I'm not talking about gender, but they have to think about what happens at home. My life is not just what happens at the workplace. How do I take care of home? And do I choose between home and my job? That's a lot that's going on. So it's not just physicians. And we try to do things that we think are going to be mindful. And we try to say, well, what's a good way of being able to support the staff in general? Is it meditation? Is it taking time off? What are the good things and what are the bad things that happen? Like drug use. People respond differently. Depression, anxiety, feeling of worthlessness. These are all things, emotional upheaval. These are all things that happen to all healthcare workers. And it's a problem because we're talking high percentage. We're talking 30 and 40% in each of the categories. So how do we work on making us better, dealing with something that we're unsure about? Because it may be COVID today, maybe it's going to be something else 3 years from now. Who knows? But it's about well-being. What do we do for the well-being for everyone? What do we do about taking care? What do we do about preventive medicine, not just dealing with acute episodes and situations?
Folks, I think I'd love to continue this conversation, and we all would, perhaps we can continue, more panels and discussions about these things at our medical society, going forward. But the hour is late, and we do want to be respectful of the staff and their time here at the museum. So I will have to cut it short here, but I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening, our first foray into a public-facing event in a long time. And I'm very happy to have seen everybody here, and I want to extend another thanks to our panelists here. And last but not least, thanks to our social committee and to Ms. Amelia Soto, our executive director. Without this, none of this would have been possible. A big hand of applause to Ms. Soto. Thank you. And thank you. I wish everybody a good night and get them safe.
Thank you to the panelists.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Lopresto, for being our fearless leader.